Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 2nd of February, 2026, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish, delighted to have Ben Rubin with me in the studio. And we're especially pleased to have Vanessa Beeley joining us today from Lebanon. So welcome, Vanessa. Now, much going on in the world, and as always, UK Column is going to dive in as deeply as we can, but hopefully in some different directions from other news channels. Today, we're going to be having a look at the Epstein story and the burying of bad news. Vanessa's going to be reporting about what's happening inside Iran. Ben, you're having a look at machinations of modern Britain. We're also going to be having a brief look at Nigel Farage's reform, which is allegedly setting up a Jewish alliance. Ben is going to be on the subject of corporate state capture. Vanessa will be looking at Mossad connections with Iran, and we're going to be ending with extremism and the Great Replacement. So if we get started today, essentially we're going to have a look at what's happening in the world, and even the BBC's having problems, as you'll see from a little clip in a minute. But let's kick off with perhaps a surprising image of the Twin Towers under attack a few seconds before they started collapsing. And why have we brought this up on screen today? Well, this was the caption really that goes with it: a good day to bury bad news. And if you don't know what this story's about, it goes back to 2009. And what was happening was that in 2001, a Labour aide, Joe Moore, was facing criticism after she said the attacks on the towers were a good day to bury bad news that was coming out of the Labour Party. So let's just take this into the present time. We think at the moment we're seeing not only a good day, but a good period to bury the Epstein story under, of course, the dark clouds of a coming war with Iran. So just have a think about that. Which is leading which? Are they connected? We'll see in today's news.
Or is the Epstein story being used as a distraction for something else?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let's kick off with a very soft BBC report. Let's hear what they had to say about Epstein.
Some bits starting to come out, particularly more kind of exchanges involving Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, former Prince Andrew, of course, and his association with Jeffrey Epstein. And indeed Ghislaine Maxwell, who's serving 20 years in prison for her part in Epstein's crimes. We're also seeing some references to the former ambassador to Washington, Peter Mandelson. Again, sort of his relationship, which he's expressed regret over a number of times, and indeed over which he lost his job here in Washington when he was a cabinet minister back in 2009. Some Democrats in Congress, one in particular, on the Oversight Committee, who's been looking at this, are very unhappy with the amount of documents, even though there's huge amounts that are being released. They say a lot's being held back. The Justice Department say what they're holding back is stuff that would infringe people's privacy, medical reports, things like child pornography and images, other distressing images. And indeed, even with those withholdings, you do still have to sort of sign an age verification thing to get into the documents themselves, suggesting there is, adult material in here.
So in my mind, a pretty soft report from the BBC, but the key theme is it's Andy and Mandelson. These are the key people involved in this. There's no real look into the deeper structure of what's actually got on or why all this information has taken so long to come out. Now, let's just contrast the BBC's soft report there with this story of abuse. This is the Fenethy story, which the UK column has reported. And whilst the Fenethy abuse abuse story based up in Scotland, potentially with tens of thousands of little girls being abused, largely unreported. A couple of minor reports from the BBC, even though this particular abuse case seems to have links up to the highest echelons of the Scottish state and establishment. And we might ask a question here is, what is the link between the abuse of children and people in power? Well, of course, it's compromising material, compromat, and the ability to blackmail people to get them to do what a state or its powers want them to actually do. Now, David Scott, in his conclusions in this article, said that the connections around the Fenethy House abuse means influence, power, authority, and access. And he pointed out that the memories and testimonies emerging from the Fenethy girls so far provides evidence that those in power and authority in Scotland had access, terrible and brutish access, to the tens of thousands of little Glaswegian girls who passed through Fenethy. But despite those numbers, the BBC hasn't reported, and we may well ask why. Is it to protect the state? Now, in contrast to Donohue's initial opening video from the BBC, let's just have a look at the report that came in from Todd Blanche, the US Deputy Attorney General, as he talked about the release of information.
Once again, Donald Trump's presidency is being dominated not by his policies in the White House, but what he did many years ago with Jeffrey Epstein. Today, a fresh tranche of millions of new documents were released by the Department of Justice.
Today, we are producing more than 3 million pages, including more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images.
So it all sounds good, but the reality is it's taken a very long time to drag this information out of the American state. And even so, this is only roughly 50% of the documents that's actually held. Now, is this all causing a problem? Yes. Let's have a look at Laura Kunsberg talking about the issues of Epstein and what it means.
Here we are on day 2 of trying to unravel this latest enormous information that has burst out of the Epstein files on the other side of the Atlantic, and also a troubling allegation made by an American lawyer in an interview with the BBC that there is a second woman who has said she was trafficked to the UK for a sexual encounter with the former Prince Andrew. So again, this has been another whirlwind of news where Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted paedophile, has been making headlines and making life very awkward and embarrassing for lots of other powerful people.
On this Sunday's newscast. Hello, it's Paddy in the studio.
It's Laura in the studio.
And it's Henry at home.
And in a few minutes, we will hear at length from Professor John Bew, who we had on the TV this morning, but who's going to talk to us, I think, hopefully, in a very helpful way about all the bewildering things that are happening in the world. And he was the Chief Foreign Policy Advisor to Keir Starmer, to Rishi Sunak, also to Boris Johnson. So stand by for that, because he's a really fascinating guy.
And the Fleet Street Knight and historian Max Hastings was on Radio 4 with me saying, the thing we're all talking about, the Epstein files, is a circus, it's a freak show, because there is so much going on in the world that we should be talking about more.
So there you are, Ben. It's just a freak show. He might embarrass a few people. Epstein might embarrass a few people high up in the US government, and we should ignore it. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because which is covering which? Vanessa, let's bring you in, because, of course, whilst we now have this mush of information about Epstein, what is certainly happening is another war unfolding in Iran. Maybe there's connections. Over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it is very interesting that these files, although they were destined to be released, are suddenly released now as Trump is building up his big, beautiful armada on the sea borders with Iran. And so basically my report today, I've been speaking to a number of people inside Iran. The first video is Dr. Setara Sadiki, who's an assistant professor at Tehran University. And just through this section, it's fine if people think, well, this can also be propaganda. But I think my point is, why aren't these perspectives, just as in Syria they were disappeared, why are these perspectives never taken into account or never presented to you for you to draw your own conclusions by the likes of the BBC? So let's just hear Setora basically speaking about life in Iran under these constant attacks by Israel and by...
I mean, we have tested our resistance. We have always come out of it, but it's very painful and it has an impact on the society. Sometimes at some point it becomes very not only traumatizing, but also like very exhausting. I've heard this from a lot of Iranians. Why don't they just leave us alone? Let us live the life that we have. It's never going to happen. We know it's never going to happen. We're not going to get a break from any of the various series of aggressions. Sometimes it's sanctions, it's assassinations, it's terrorist groups being armed, it's hijacking protests and turning them into killing sprees, like what we have seen. Sometimes it's direct actions, like what we saw in the 12-day war. But we never get a break from all those aggression, and oppression.
And this, I have to say, is the view of the huge majority of Iranians in Iran when one actually looks at their social media or actual Iranian media, not media that is effectively produced by Mossad, the CIA, and the MI6. Then I want to look at this article by Jonathan Cook, a very renowned journalist based in occupied Palestine. This was written a few days ago. The BBC pushes the case for an illegal war in Iran with even bigger lies than Trump's, which is a pretty big claim. But let's have a look at what he says in the text of the article itself. So its diplomatic correspondent, Caroline Hawley, starts by credulously amplifying a fantastical death toll of tens of thousands of dead from recent protests in Iran, figures provided by regime opponents. Contrast that with the BBC's constant 2 years of caution and downplaying of the numbers killed in Gaza by Israel. The idea that in a few days Iranian security forces managed to kill as many Iranians as Israel has managed to kill Palestinians in Gaza from the prolonged carpet bombing and leveling of the tiny enclave as well as the starvation of its population beggars belief. The figures sound patently ridiculous because they are patently ridiculous. And then I want to just show this report, which was about 2 weeks ago. I think it was on the 10th of January, just as the protests that hijacked the genuine labor movement in Iran that had been ongoing peacefully since the 1st of January. It gathered violence and the rioters joined the protests on around I think it was the 8th of January. So let's just play how the BBC are reporting on this.
Irfan Soltani's family say he's scheduled to be executed by the authorities in Iran sometime tomorrow. He's 26, and the decision is apparently final. There's no appeal. We don't know the charges, but if the death sentence is carried out, it's believed it may be the first following Iran's brutal crackdown on anti-government dissent after more than 2 weeks of nationwide street protests. Human rights organizations are warning his case could signal the start of mass executions targeting demonstrators.
So, I mean, totally alarmist and unsubstantiated claims there. From Iranian media, Iran's judiciary rejects the fabricated news by hostile media about the death penalty for the rioter Irfan Soltani. Let's have a quick look at the BBC headlines on a Google search around the same time. You can basically see there they are not dropping this story. Trump warns of very strong action if Iran executes protesters. Trump vows very strong action, etc., etc. So you would assume this was a fait accompli, that Irfan Soltani is about to be executed. In fact, at that point, he should have already been executed. And then let's have a look at what happened in the last 24 hours. Well, Iranian protester Irfan Soltani was released on bail. Reports say, quite extraordinary that the BBC will add this to raise doubt over the story, which is palpably true. Whereas when they're reporting on amplified numbers of deaths at the hands of the Iranian government, of course, there's no doubt over that. Then I just want to basically play another section from my conversation with Setara, where she talks about the level of violence coming from the rioters themselves.
He said that he's been, he could still smell blood from all the hours that he spent in the hospital treating wounded people, and that they were stabbed, and like some of them, like the attackers like twist the knife inside the body, like poking out parts. It's very graphic. It's very violent. And he was like, I don't know if Iran, I mean, I can't believe that Iranians can do this to their own, like fellow Iranians. It's just impossible. It's very strange. And I don't know how that's possible. Part of it, because there are videos of these attackers using drugs before starting their attack, because I don't think a normal person can do that. And there is also, this is also something that has happened before in other countries. So yeah, the pictures are very violent. They have killed police officers or Basij forces, and then after killing them, they have chopped the bodies, they have set them on fire. It's something that I had not even heard.
This is something I'm also hearing from other people, that the rioters themselves had been given Captagon prior to the violence escalating. And of course, that was very similar to what happened previously in Syria. Then another BBC headline more recently, we all know someone who was killed, Iran protesters tell BBC of brutal crackdown. And you remember last week we talked about the human rights activists in Iran that are not in Iran. They're funded by the CIA and they're based in Fairfax, Virginia. And then finally, I just want to play another section with Dr. Setara Sadiki, where she talks about the claim by a number of media outlets and social media outlets backed by, again, the Mossad, CIA, and MI6, talking about the number of dead and basing it on a tag on one of the body bags that had the number on it of around 11,000. So let's hear her explanation.
And then like a number tag on one of the body bags, which was like, I don't remember the exact number, but it was probably 11,000 or 12,000 something. I think 11,000 something. And then people were saying that, oh, see, in 2 days they have killed 11,000 people. When in fact, and they got the head of the forensic to talk about it on TV, and they showed all the documents from the beginning of the Persian New Year. The Persian New Year started from the 21st of March. So not everyone that comes to the morgue goes for the forensic and an autopsy, because people who have died of natural causes don't need that, and they come from hospitals and they directly are going to get prepared for the burial. But the bodies that need autopsy and like a forensic analysis go to this particular section. And he was explaining that they put tag numbers from the beginning of the Persian year to the end. And normally during a year, about 15,000 bodies are referred to the forensics in Tehran. So the number that you were seeing was in the 10th month of the Persian calendar. So 11,000 had started. It was like after 10 months.
Again, none of this context will ever be given to you or even investigated by the likes of the BBC.
Vanessa, very true, but we are starting to see through the smoke and mirrors now, and many people in our chat box today simply saying that BBC scrabbling now to hold on to its reputation worldwide, because it's getting easier and easier to see this blatant manipulation of politics, of the news, in order to do the bidding of the political masters and the paymasters of the BBC. We'll talk about this a lot more in UK column extra etc. after the news. But just moving on, Ben, if the Iranians and other countries overseas are not safe, not least from Western bombing, are we safe here in UK, or is something at work under the surface?
That's a very good question. And when we talk about exporting democracy, what does that actually mean? What does that look like? So we're going to look at the state of modern Britain through the lens of the Gorton and Denton by-election, which is upcoming, and specifically the candidates of the four main political parties. I've not included the Lib Dems in that description of Maine. So we're going to look at the Tories, Labour, Greens and Reform, and who they're putting up, and a bit of commentary on that. And then also towards the end, a bit of an examination as to what's going on behind the scenes. So we'll kick things off with the Tories, who are kind of an also-ran, which is remarkable given that they were in power until about 18 months ago. Yeah, you know, most successful political party in the whole of history, I think. And they just put up Charlotte Cadden. If we can get Charlotte up on screen. So she was a police officer for 30 years in Manchester and for the Met, and she set up and chaired the Police, Sex, Equality and Equity Network to challenge workplace discrimination based on sex. Classic Tory. They never change. They really don't. She's also, interestingly, a trustee of a charity called Sex Matters, which is founded by Maya Forstater, who is a member of British Friends of Israel, which is a recurring theme, which we'll come back to in a moment. Before we do, though, let's have a little look at Angeliki Stodgia, the Labour Party candidate.
Absolutely thrilled and excited, and I want to thank everyone who came to the hustings. I am a proud Mancunian woman. I have walked the streets of this constituency. This is about Manchester. Manchester is a city united. We are rejecting division. I am so looking forward to going out on the doorstep and winning this for Labour. Yeah!
She sounds like she's from Manchester.
Well, she has got a little bit of an accent, I think. I could pick it up. You probably wouldn't because you're the real deal, but... Well,
are you telling me I'm a northerner, Brian?
From up north, anyway.
She was not. Well, I don't know how much up north there was in there. She's Greek, so I don't know. Like, there's not many English people in British politics these days, anyway. And also, more importantly, you know, putting that aside, she's got a very interesting professional background. So, as well as being a Manchester City councillor and has been since 2012, she's also a stakeholder engagement and communication expert at Arup, who are a World Economic Forum strategic partner and heavily involved in the 15-minute cities initiative, the energy and transportation transition that we're being forced into, the remodelling and, well, destruction and rebuilding of our city centres.
And our societies.
Absolutely, yes. You know, physical infrastructure is an expression of us as a people, ultimately. Yeah. And Arup is absolutely involved in bulldozing that, getting rid of it, engaging in these public-private partnerships. And then the question has to be, are Labour really for working people? Did we ever think that they were? Certainly not in the past few years, anyway.
No, well, I certainly don't think they are. I mean, Blair started it, didn't he?
Yeah.
With New Labour. That is where the massive attack on the society, communities in this country started.
Indeed it did. But luckily, we do have some real working class people in the mix. Let's have a little listen to Hannah Spencer from the Green Party.
So I've just found out that the far right are organising a little protest near me this Sunday at a hotel, and they've decided to do it at 4:30, which feels a little bit odd, considering them not supposed to be patriotic and all that they've chosen to do it when the Lionesses are in the Euros final. So I will be not attending myself because I'm definitely going to be in a pub watching England.
She's the real deal, isn't she? Them's lot patriots. Dear oh dear. Yeah, and apparently she's a plasterer as well, as you could tell from the plastering that she was attempting to do. But it doesn't quite pass the sniff test, actually. And a bunch of people have looked at this up on X and passed comment on the work. And this one from an account saying, number one conclusion from that is that she can't plaster. That lump is never going on the wall. The plaster's completely dried out. It's no use. She also can't board out. So the boards on the wall behind her look like they were done by a child. And actually, this whole thing looks like it's PR.
Staged.
Completely staged, yeah. So this is a trick. And it's a trick designed to appeal to a certain type of person, and that's likely the non-working class and middle classes who perhaps idealise the concept of the working class hero, but are repulsed by the actual working class. I think that's probably a very good assessment of Mrs. Spencer, Hannah Spencer, Green Party candidate. And then finally, we're going to spend a bit more time focusing on this because this is a biggie, actually, is the Reform candidate announced by Nigel Farage, who I'm going to call Comrade Goodwin. It's Matt Goodwin. And when I saw this announced last week, it immediately made me think of this quote from Lenin: the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. And that is because Matt Goodwin is many things. He's a university professor. He was a big-time Substacker through the COVID period, had a suspiciously large amount of money to spend on doing polling, I noticed. He was doing polling all the time and getting a huge audience on Substack. And then about 18 months ago, he was elevated onto GB News on Friday nights, a peak time show, given a huge platform to lead the national conversation from the patriotic right for GB News, which was quite confusing because just 15 years ago, he was writing reports like this: Right response, understanding and countering populist extremism in Europe. And you can see that there's a caution sign, and the sign goes around to the right. So they're urging caution about people going around to the right. Really interesting. This is from Chatham House. And in the introduction from Robin Niblett, the director of Chatham House, it says, in recent years, populist extremist parties have achieved notable breakthroughs in national and local elections across the European Union. Their rise poses a growing challenge to European societies, to mainstream political parties, and to the process of European integration itself. So 2011, that's peak UKIP time, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So which would have been Nigel Farage. So you've got Goodwin essentially writing against Farage and the patriotic right. And then 15 years later, he turns up and he's being announced as a parliamentary candidate by Farage. Very confusing. Right.
Well, we say that. I know why you say that, Ben. Very confusing, unless it is to lead Farage's reform in a very different direction to the place that most members think it's heading.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, this is planned manipulation of the political system.
Indeed, it is. I think that would certainly be my conclusion as well. Goodwin goes on to say in his opening remarks in the report, and we'll provide a link to this, by the way, you should go and read it. My assessment was that it sounded like it was being written from the perspective of someone in a position of imperial authority, looking down on a population and thinking about how to maneuver the different parts against each other. That was the sense I got when I first read it. And Goodwin here says, populist extremist parties, PEPs, present one of the most pressing challenges to European democracies. These parties share two core features. They fiercely oppose immigration and rising ethnic and cultural diversity, which is what I think most reform supporters think reform is there to do. And then he goes on to say, and they pursue a populist anti-establishment strategy, which they're certainly doing. Farage positions himself as the ultimate anti-establishment figure when he's really not at all. He's total insider. That attacks mainstream parties and is ambivalent, if not hostile, towards liberal representative democracy. So that's what this report is set out to understand. And it was backed by this guy, Daniel Sachs, I'll come back to in a moment, but I'll just read the quote, which is that at a time when European societies are becoming increasingly diverse and prejudice and hostility towards that diversity are growing, building new foundations for social cohesion will be a profound challenge for European citizens and mainstream political parties alike. It is my hope that this project can contribute to that important task. Sachs funded it and also provided close guidance and collaboration to the creation of the report that Goodwin actually thanks him for personally in the opening remarks. And the name Daniel Sachs, for certainly regular viewers, will be very familiar. I've spoken about him a lot, maybe less so recently, but he is a Swedish businessman closely linked into Chatham House as a senior advisor and the Council on Foreign Relations. He's also the investment chief at the Open Society Foundation. So he actually makes all of the investment decisions on behalf of George Soros, previously now Alex Soros, George Soros' son. He's also a young global leader of the World Economic Forum, and he's also linked into the Bilderberg Group via Marcus Wallenberg, who he's a close advisor to via Wallenberg Investments. And he's also got his own foundation. Very busy guy, very powerful man, Mr. Daniel Sachs. And the Daniel Sachs Foundation focuses on what it calls funded activism. And we talked a lot about Apolitical Foundation, which he helped to establish. And they are actively involved in retraining and reframing politicians and civil servants in over 170 countries. But they are partnered with the Cabinet Office, and the UK government is essentially the test case, the laboratory for everything they're doing. And he also is involved in something called Multitudes Foundation, which I spoke about 18 months ago. And I put a link in the show notes to the report, so you can go and watch that back. And Multitudes Foundation, in its own words, provides political change makers in Europe with financial resources, strategic advice, practical support, and a community of practice to break through existing power structures. And it is specifically focused on supporting new immigrants into Europe, the so-called new Europeans that we were talking about last week.
With the new Europeans comes an imposed new political agenda and a new nation-state agenda. This is coming in very quickly.
Well, destruction of the nation-state and its replacement with a global neo-Marxist technocratic dictatorship. That's
global cities.
Absolutely, it's what we're heading towards. And that is who Farage has put front and centre in this by-election coming up at the end of the month, which does beg the question, are they controlled opposition? Which then begs the next question, which is, if they are controlled opposition, who are they controlled by? Let's have a little listen to this clip.
I want a national unifying politics which puts Britain first, not Pakistan, not Gaza, not any other foreign policy thing, Britain first.
Not Israel?
Well,
not Israel. The media's just been talking about Israel and the IDF for the last 4 or 5 days. That's what they talk about. You wouldn't think that high streets in this country are on the way down, or public services aren't doing well, or people are struggling with their bills. I hear so much about Israel.
Is that a fair point?
Well, my personal view is Israel is a very close ally. Well, until recently, it was a very close ally of the United Kingdom. We should look after our allies.
What do you reckon?
I reckon there's a lot of questions to be asked, because this is becoming more and more obvious that there is a hidden hand interfering in UK politics, which is ultimately breaking down the whole of our constitutional and political structure. And it's not going to end well for anybody in this country, wherever they've come from, whatever colour.
Absolutely. 2 final points. Or actually one final point, 2 slides on reform, which I just need to draw people's attention to, which relates to this guy, James Orr, who is a senior advisor to Nigel Farage. He's a professor at the University of Cambridge, trustee of the Roger Scruton Legacy Foundation, and he was very excited because he got to host Peter Thiel at Cambridge for his Antichrist lecture series. And this is what is going on behind the scenes at Reform, alongside all the other stuff that we just talked about.
So we can be spending more time being nice to people and sorting people out at a kind human level. We're on to the Antichrist. We'll save more discussion on that for UK Column Extra. Okay, thank you, Ben. Now, let's just say once again to our audience, wherever you are in the world, wherever you are in UK, huge thank you to everybody that's supporting us. We do need your financial support, not only to do what we're doing, but also to grow. And if we bring the magic button up on the screen, if you haven't visited the UK Column website, you'll find a huge amount of material there, not only the news archives, but also many, many written articles and interviews. This is 20 years worth of material for you. It's a huge database. And if you join us as a member, monthly or annual paid membership, you are part of the team. You're helping us not only do what we do, but to grow. And we're up against some monsters, the £1 billion of the BBC. If you want to challenge this corrupt mainstream media system that we've got in this country, then please support the UK column. Now, coming up tonight at 7 p.m, we've got Germ Warfare, and he's having a look at the Twin Towers. An amazing coincidence. We started off with Twin Towers, but this lady whose husband died in Twin Towers, and the line here is the official story is a lie. So that should be very interesting. And tomorrow at 1 p.m, we've got Charles Mallet interviewing Magda Taylor, having a look at the historical rise of vaccinations. And this is a very, very interesting subject. If you've never been near it before, encourage you to have a look at that interview. Now, let's come back to Epstein and just have a little look at in more detail around Epstein and what's happened and how it's being reported. And I'm going to jump straight in here with the BBC report. This was from yesterday. Second Epstein victim claims she was sent to the UK for sex with Andrew, the lawyer says. So Epstein, as far as the BBC is concerned, is Andrew, and they were very excited at photographs like this, which was Andrew over the prostrated body of a woman. At one point, he's touching her abdomen, but there's no idea what the context of this is or where it was taken. But I'm going to put this caption over the top of this, that as more and more comes out in the Epstein case about Andrew, we are told to believe that nobody knew. His police security team had no idea what was going on. SO15, the counter-terrorist branch, had no idea. MI5, MI6, or even the FBI and the CIA, nobody knew. Now, this is simply not credible. This is a mirror of what happened with Jimmy Savile, where it was obvious that many, many people in the establishment absolutely did know what was going on. So Epstein, there is no doubt that what has happened is now being covered up in order to protect very powerful people in high places and high political places, both in the States and in UK. And of course, if we don't get the lid off this, there is no justice either for the victims or for anybody else living in the world we do. And when we start to see connections between Epstein and Israel and a power base for fomenting more wars in the world, more money for the global military machine, this is something that needs to be exposed and stopped as soon as possible. So a lot of work to be done, and it's no good looking to the BBC because they don't want to investigate. Now, if we look at other reports, CBS News here, this is back from July 2025. Just give you a summary on screen. They're saying that the Justice Department and the FBI review finds no client list for Epstein, nor evidence that he blackmailed prominent figures. And it concluded that Epstein did actually commit suicide. So this is a common line by the worldwide mainstream press. Nothing to see. It's all a bit of a storm in a teacup. We should ignore it when the reality is this is a trail that leads to depravity and corruption at the highest level of politics. Now, contrast CBS News with the International Business Times here. This is a report from the 31st of July last year. Ex-CIA agent explains why Epstein may be a secret Israeli agent and why the list will never be released. Now, part of the list has been released, but we know that's only 50%. And if we stamp this, the former CIA man, Kiriakou, says in his mind the reason that nothing important is really being released is compromising material. This is the sort of image, this is the images or the scenes which allow people to be blackmailed to do the bidding of higher powers. So if that was the International Business Times, we can also have a look at MSN here. And here's the headline: evidence of Epstein's ties to Israeli intelligence grow. This is an opinion piece, but pulling out a little bit of it, the first paragraph here is talking about a very capable Iranian group called Handala. And what it's saying in this paragraph is that their work and reports were published and certainly seem to hold credibility. And they reinforce this by saying that numerous independent media outlets, including Reason, All Source Intelligent, Grey Zone, Declassified, and Drop Site, were doing further analysis on the back of this, and the trail was certainly pointing towards Israel. Now, this article itself in MSN also highlights the fact that other sites were poo-pooing this, and anybody who was daring to point a finger at Israel or Mossad was being charged online with appalling behaviour, or it was something to do with Hitler and the Nazi Party and apologising for those terrible regimes. And it got into more and more speculation with a very defensive position for the Jewish community and Israel. So it's very clear that the worldwide media, and Israel in particular, desperate to deflect attention from Epstein and the scale of the abuses going on around him, and also the nature of very powerful people connected with him. I'll just end this little comment on the media with this man, J. Caspian King, who was mentioned in the MSN article, and he's quoted as saying, on Planet Epstein, everything that happens, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the war in Gaza, the suppression of speech by the Trump administration, proves the country is run by blackmail, paedophilia, and fealty to Israel. So this is nothing to see. It's all a load of nonsense. It's all fluff. And of course, as we started the news today, this is a key part of what we are seeing the BBC and others trying to do, is dismiss Epstein. It's a bit of froth when in fact it represents the heart of corruption, and the abuse of women and children are part of that. Now, happily, we have got senators speaking out about this. Back in July 2025, we had the Republican Senator Thomas Massey saying that the US public needs to know. He wasn't messing around. He was saying if the executive branch won't release phase 2 of the Epstein files, we will. Americans deserve transparency and the victims deserve justice. This is the header for his X account. And if we come up to date, he's recently posted this, which says that within hours of the Epstein file release, a super PAC funded by Israel First billionaires Miriam Adelson and Paul Singh and John Paulson, who himself appears in Epstein's Black Book, brought another $800,000 of TV ads against me, to which we asked the question, why should this be if there's nothing to see in what Epstein was involved in? But here in the UK, back in 2014, the UK column was warning about the penetration of Israel into the very heart of government. And this was the network around the Cabinet Office and Francis Maud, in office at that time, showing that Israeli Defence Force Unit 8200 was going to be linked in with a group of leading digital organisations, both in UK and Israel, and that universities in UK were going to be linked to universities in Israel, and there was going to be a substantial increase in the sharing of sensitive not only cyber but government security information with Israel. None of this, of course, debated in the House. And if I add to this, and going back to about the same period, UK column unleashed this network when Malcolm Rifkin, chair of the Intelligence and Security Committee and declared Conservative Friend of Israel, was sacked for being involved with corruption amongst some corporations. But at the time, he was interfacing with Foreign Secretary William Hague, declared Conservative Friend of Israel, and Prime Minister David Cameron, Conservative Friend of Israel, but also the Prime Minister who said that his belief in Israel is unshakable. And he's proud of the key role that Conservative Friends of Israel plays within our party. So do we live simply in UK, or are we actually in a dual state with Israel? Certainly appears to us it's the latter, but of course none of this declared in Parliament. Now, the BBC not investigating these areas, but BBC getting very, very excited that the Epstein files have brought links into to the Norwegian court and royalty. So here's the headline: Rape trial puts Norway's royal family in unwelcome glare of the public. The blonde gentleman on screen is Marius Borg Høiby, and he's facing 38 charges, including the rape of 4 women. He's not actually a member of the Norwegian royal family, but he's very close to it. It's a stepson relationship. But what the BBC got excited about was emails indicating that Crown Princess Mette-Marit had actually been staying at Epstein's house in Palm Beach. So the BBC very, very excited by this, and that's what they're going to focus on. They're not going to look into the compromat issue and people in high places and politics being manipulated. So we just come back to that MSN article, evidence of Epstein's ties to Israeli intelligence growing. And we ask a question: what sort of compromising material would Epstein's handlers want? And there's only one answer to that, and it's deviant sex and preferably child abuse, because those two things give ultimate and total control over an individual. So would he be doing this in order to control politicians and influence American and British foreign policy? The answer is yes, and that is how he would do it. Vanessa, let's bring you back on screen with us, because I've set the scene. Many people deeply concerned about Epstein's relationships. Israel is somewhere there in the background. I don't know, what do you like to say about this?
Well, I would disagree. They're in the background. I would say they're very much center stage and front of stage right now, as they should be, of course. And I'm going to stick with the Israel theme, with who is behind the recent riots, and of course, who is basically driving for war against Iran, or at least regime change in Iran. Now, the other day, it was interesting. I think it was yesterday. This came up in my feed on X, so it sort of drew my attention to it. Let's just have a look at this. So he's basically saying, this is Casey Babb. I have no idea who he is. He's basically reiterating support for the Iranian rioters. And at the end, he says, your fight is my fight. So this sort of piqued my curiosity. So I went to his profile page on X, which revealed this. Now, if you can just keep it on the screen while I just run through the organizations that he admits to being involved in. So first of all, it's the Macdonald Laurier Institute, but he heads up the Promised Land Project, which I'm sure doesn't take any sort of enormous intelligence or intellectual capability to figure out what that is related to. And then basically the INSS, which is the National Security Studies institution in Tel Aviv, Israel. He's also connected to RUSI. He's an advisor to DARA doctors. Now, what does that mean? Doctors Against Racism and Anti-Semitism. Guess what? Now, that refers me again back to the campaign for anti-Semitism that, of course, is targeting British doctors in the NHS for daring to protest genocide. I wonder if a similar organization to DARA is going to suddenly appear in the UK. Might be something to look out for. He's also a former advisor to 2 defense ministers in Canada, and apparently his views are his own. So I just took this screenshot from one of many that I found online to demonstrate exactly who Dr. Casey Babb is. If we just have a look at this next screenshot. So this is from one of his many affiliated websites, For the Love of Zion. Dr. Casey Babb, Zionism is not conquest, apparently, despite 2 years of intensified genocide in Gaza and in the West Bank. It's the greatest indigenous success story in human history. Well, there's an awful lot there that we can probably talk about in extra, but of course I would contest that. And then if you have any remaining doubt about who is behind these riots, who's pushing for the destabilization in Iran, let's hear from Mr. Netanyahu. This was on the 10th of January. So the rioters were in place from the 8th until the 10th. So here he's coming in when Iran had managed to shut down the internet and actually shut down Starlink. Funnily enough, as soon as they did that, the riots actually stopped, the violence stopped. So let's hear. He's obviously now trying to push them back onto the streets.
There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There's nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss. The vast majority of Iranians know their regime doesn't care a whit about them. If it did care, if it cared about you, it would stop wasting billions of dollars on futile wars across the Middle East. It would start improving your lives. Imagine if all the vast money the regime wasted on nuclear weapons and foreign wars were invested in your children's education and improving your health care.
Now, that's a very important point, actually, because people may not be aware that education in Iran is free and healthcare is free. I wonder if that can be said about the state of Israel. But this is complete projection, of course, from Netanyahu, because who is starting the wars in the Middle East? Who is creating destabilization? Again, we can talk more about this in extra. And this is a video that I highly recommend that people watch. I've also included in the show notes an interview that I did with Iranian, actually he has a master's in AI and robotics. Sorry, could I just have that on screen? Thank you. Basically, he also confirms the fact that even Mossad Farsi accounts, Persian accounts, are talking about their involvement quite openly in the riots in Iran. I recommend this video. It will be in the show notes. It's 2 hours long, but it goes into huge depth about Israel's backing of the protests, what really happened in Iran, riots or protests. And then finally, if you think it's all Israel, no, it isn't. But this is Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State under Trump's first administration, talking to, I think it's Channel 13 on Israeli TV about the US involvement alongside Israel. So let's just play this.
President Trump said help is on the way. Iranians went to the street, but help didn't come. Do you think till now the Trump administration lost an opportunity for a regime change during this uprising?
No, I don't think so. By the way, help did come. Lots of help came. You may not see it all. Okay. We may not know about it all, but I'm very confident that the United States is actively trying to do all that it can to support the Iranian people.
Well, I don't think there's very much ambiguity about that. Funnily enough, not reported by the BBC, of course.
Of course. Thank you for that, Vanessa. Well, let's just end this little section, which is on Friday, I had several people contact me asking about the fact that Reform UK had apparently set up a Jewish alliance group. Now, I did quite a bit of work over the weekend trying to track down the sources for this, and the key source is the Jewish News. And the headline here, Nigel Farage's Reform Party is launching Jewish Alliance and Friends of Israel groups. Now, my question to myself was, is this information true? I couldn't find any direct sources on the Jewish News. I couldn't find other sources on the internet, and it appears that the Jewish News is the only news source running this story. Now, that is a credible source itself. They have a good reputation for accuracy of reports in some areas at least. However, we couldn't find anything else that supported it. And we did a check before we started the news today, and we couldn't find Reform talking about it. So is this something where there was a leak of information, Reform, and it's going to happen? Or is this something that the press is trying to wind up in order to force Reform to do it? We'll see whether we can get more information. But what we can tell you is in the background, Mr. Tice has been helping run a Hearts and Minds clearly aimed at the Jewish community. So he's been visiting UK's Jewish Security Trust, an organisation which functions as a private Jewish security organisation alongside the UK's police, intelligence and counter-terrorism units. So we'll just leave that as declared. What is Reform up to? We're not too sure at the moment, but we'll stay on the case. And Ben, I think that brings us back to you.
Indeed it does, yes. Last week, Brian mentioned on 2 occasions, I think, the Institute for Government event where an announcement was made about the transformation of the centre of government, the civil service, and the ambition to move fast and fix things. That's what they were talking about. So we heard about the civil service, the political component to this. Let's have a little listen to Alexander Mossad from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change talking about the private sector's response.
At TBI, we believe Britain has a unique opportunity to reimagine its public services around a new model, personalised, preventative, always on. I've just attended a speech by Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, and I'm delighted to say he seems to agree with us. He spoke powerfully about the need to replace the legacy state and build a new consensus for what government does and how it does it. To drive this scale of reform, it is absolutely central that the civil service has the right skills, the right people, and the right processes to deliver this change. The Chief Secretary announced a number of changes to training, performance management, and hiring, all of which we welcome. What matters now is that these pieces connect to a genuinely radical program of change to create a civil service that can serve the British people well.
Change and more change.
Oh, nothing but change. From the bottom up, they're going to fix the foundations. Well, I think the foundations are probably okay. They're going to switch them out anyway because they don't like them. And they're going to move to a personalised, preventative and always-on state. That's what they're pushing towards. Personalised means they know each of us at an individual level, and that's all predicated on the use of a digital ID system. Preventative means they're going to intervene with you before you do something that they don't like, and always on means it's always on. And this is the panopticon that we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks. And it's surprise that the policy agenda lines up with what Tony Blair Institute would recommend, because Blair has been driving this agenda for the past 25 years, right? Who would have thought it? That guy's fascinating. Alexander Mossad, let's bring him on screen quickly. I've spoken about him previously. Fascinating individual. Like, who are you, Mossad? You know, like you
this applies to many of these policy people that appear out of nowhere. They're very powerful. And if you say, who exactly are they and what do they believe in? Do they believe in UK as a national state?
Yeah.
It's clear they don't. And this man has a special feature.
He certainly does, yeah. And he's very young. So I think he's probably early 30s. And he's in and out of top-level policy conversations in the UK, in Washington, in different bits of Europe, probably, I would imagine, in Ukraine. And he actually, if we can get that back on screen, we can see from his X profile, although he's changed this recently, I will just blow this up so we can see it. At the bottom right-hand side there, it says he's a citizen of nowhere.
Yeah.
How can you be a citizen of nowhere?
You're a free floating globalist. You don't align with any state. You go wherever you're going to be paid and feel comfortable.
I guess so. And I think he's telling us that he's Jewish. Like, there's a 6-pointing star there as well, so it would appear so. But I asked him that on one of his LinkedIn posts. I said, Alexander, you've said you're a citizen of nowhere, so why are you dictating British policy? Obviously, he didn't reply to that, but I think it's quite a good question. So anyway, what was he referring to? So he's actually been, as I said, defining policy. They actually, this was last week, announced this report from the Blair Institute, Public Service Reform in the Age of AI. So this is about transformative reform, using AI as a multiplier, which means making the state a lot more powerful ultimately, all predicated on the digital ID system that will allow them to govern with foresight. So they'll be able to make projections into the future and deliver interventions, obviously, all of which are presented as about care and health and all that kind of thing. But actually, it's not. It's about manipulation and control, absolutely across the board. And they were going to get the population to build this, and this will be built from the bottom up, which is how these things are always built. And obviously, we have to pay for the creation of this panopticon. And it is about replacing the foundations of our society. They're saying that the foundations apparently are crumbling. We've got to replace them completely and create a new set of public services that are going to be delivering against all of these criteria. And actually, this isn't in the future. This is happening right now. I talked about this other report that they issued back at the end of 2024 about tackling the behaviour challenge in England schools. So it's controlling the minds of your children, and the fact that they've actually, in the London borough of Barking and Dagenham, they always use the central London boroughs as laboratories, for building these new systems. Barking and Dagenham has been absolutely decimated over the past 25 years with the closure of the Ford plant and waves and waves of mass immigration. And they've built this thing called a one view system for case management, and that synthesizes more than 80 data streams, 30 million records a month from loads of different places, and it uses that information to give practitioners a single view of children and their families so that they can look out for you. And this already exists, right?
Yeah.
So this will then be part of this always-on preventative personalised state. And that's all going to be built by partners to people like the Blair Foundation, like Oracle, Google, whoever else it might be, right? And that is the carve-up that is not just not going to happen, has already happened in the back end of the British system. And it is just a feeding frenzy for private sector interests, and one of which jumped out at me over the weekend. I had a few people send me this example of PwC, of all people. We've got absolutely no business building websites, but they got given £4 million to build an AI training website, which apparently links to lots of fake courses, and based on some anecdotal assessment by someone who knows quite a lot about this stuff, apparently could have been built for about £1,000. But PwC got paid £4 million. And this is
as part of the course.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is what's happening inside government.
Okay. Well, my comment on that is when they talk about the foundations of our society crumbling, no. The foundations have been deliberately destroyed piece by piece. It was once they started to destroy the foundations and the chaos then came into play in UK. That's when they could call for the rewiring of the complete structure. So overseas, we've got people being attacked politically. We've got people being destroyed physically with bombing and missiles and everything else that the West is providing. But here inside UK and other Western countries, our society is being destroyed from the inside, hollowed out. Our minds are being attacked. The attack is on our minds. Now, you've got one video before we actually close, Ben, if you want to play it, because this video for me shows people being played off against each other
absolutely.
In a very big way.
Because they want a compliant population who are going to vote all of this stuff through, ideally. And we've heard a lot of talk over the past few years about this idea of the Great Replacement, which is a supposed vicious right-wing conspiracy theory, but actually it seems to be something that's happening on a daily basis. We've got a little video clip here from Irene Montero, who is the former Spanish Minister of Equality, talking about the Great Replacement. It's in Spanish with subtitles, but we'll summarise after we've watched the clip.
Quiero pedirles a las personas migrantes y racializadas que por favor no nos dejen solas con tanto facha. Y claro que sí queremos que voten. Claro que sí, hemos conseguido papeles, regularización ya, y ahora vamos a por la nacionalidad o a cambiar la ley para que puedan votar, por supuesto. Ojalá, teoría del reemplazo, ojalá podamos barrer de fachas y de racistas este país con gente migrante, con gente trabajadora. Claro que yo quiero que haya reemplazo, reemplazo de fachas, reemplazo de racistas, reemplazo de vividores, y que lo podamos hacer con la gente trabajadora de este país, tenga el color de la piel que tenga, sea china, negra, marrona, con todas compañeras las gentes trabajadoras de este país.
People of workers of the world unite. Black, Chinese, brown, all the colours of the rainbow. Come to Spain so that we can replace the fascists and the native population, basically. They celebrate it. That was Irene Montero, as I said, the former Spanish Minister of Equality, who was actually part of a coalition government as recently as 2023, celebrating this supposed conspiracy theory.
Incredible and very dangerous. We must end today's news there. I will say UK Column Extra will be going into the subjects we've covered today in more detail. So if you're a member of UK Column, you can join us for that. But to close off the news, Ben, thank you very much for joining me. Vanessa, thank you very much. So much to talk about, so much turbulence in the world, and UK Column's going to continue to lift the stones to get to the real truth as to what's happening underneath. We must end there. Huge thank you to everybody for watching us today, and once again, if you're not a member of UK Column, please get onto our website and join up and help us grow this news channel. We will be back for UK Column News at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. See you then. Stay posted today for UK Column Extra. Thank you. Bye-bye.